I want to talk to you about the most powerful form of learning known to the human race, and it is available to you and me right now today as we get out more into the real world with God and with real people. This is a statement from the Apostle John in a letter in the New Testament called 3 John in the 11th verse. Dear friends, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. Anybody who does what is good is from God. Anyone who does what is evil has not seen God. Demetrius is well spoken of by everyone, even by the truth itself. We also speak well of him, and you know that our testimony is true. Aren't you interested to meet Demetrius someday? Wouldn't it be wonderful if the truth were to speak of you, that you were really good? Now, what's striking in these words from John is he doesn't say what we would be likely to say in our day. Don't imitate anybody. Don't be a copy. Be original. Be unique. Be creative. Be yourself. No, he says, imitate, but imitate the right stuff, not the wrong stuff. Imitate that which is good. Imitate people that you see from whom you can learn in that way. Why does he do that? Because we learn by imitating. Rene Girard, thinker and writer who was connected with Stanford for quite a while, talks a lot about the power of imitation. He calls it mimetic theory, from like being a mimic or miming or so. He says, imitation is the fundamental mechanism of human behavior, and it is wired into us. I was reading an article by Eric Peterson not too long ago, and this is part of what he writes about. One day as I was out walking over a hill, I was able to look down into a horse corral where I saw my neighbor Mary hunched over a foal. She was unsteady on her hooves. It was apparent the foal was just born and still wet. While the mother mare stood close by and kept a watchful eye, Mary straddled the foal, pressing up her face against the side of the newborn's face, vigorously rubbing its neck. I had never seen anything quite like it before, but it all looked very intimate, up close, personal, even affectionate. A few days later, I ran into Mary and I asked her about that morning. What was the thing you were doing the other day with the foal? Very matter-of-factly, almost as if she was annoyed to have to explain such things to a city boy, Mary responded with a single word, imprinting. Seeing that word did not register for me, she continued, I became basically a surrogate mother to that little horse. I spoke tenderly to it, and it learned to respond to my voice and trust me to lead it. We bonded. And then Eric goes on to write, imprinting, a deep and meaningful relationship with God, begins with our baptism into Christ, where we get acquainted with the voice of the Son, where we become familiar with his ways. And it develops as we practice our baptisms, entering into the rhythms of a life of discipleship. Most significantly, as we exercise the holy affirmations and the holy denials of our new life, no to sin and evil, yes to the kingdom of God and the Jesus way. We hear the voice, we heed the voice. God has deeply wired us so that we learn by imprinting or by mimicking or by imitating. In Jonathan Haidt's book, Anxious Generation, he has a picture. I'll hold it up in case you were able to see it. And it's of a guy walking in a field, and there's a bunch of goslings following it. It's a real famous picture. He writes it's in a lot of textbooks. Konrad Lorenz was a scientist, and what happened was he walked around a bunch of little goslings during their critical moment, that window of deep impact, of deep learning, of deep change. He'd walked around them, and they imprinted on his boots, so they would follow him anywhere. Ducks, geese, many other water or ground-dwelling birds have an evolved learning mechanism called imprinting that tells the babies which adult they must follow. They will follow whatever mother-sized object moves into their field of vision a set number of hours after hatching. It's an amazing thing. And in our own way, human beings imprint as well. I have a young friend who, at the age of 6, saw his first John Wayne movie and for some reason kind of imprinted on John Wayne and would walk around after that movie saying things like, "I tell ya, Hallie, you're mighty pretty when you get angry." Uh-huh. And hearing a 6-year-old do that is pretty hilarious. But we are that way if we want to learn how to play an instrument or how to play a sport. How do we speak? We imprint. Now, here's part of what Jonathan Haidt writes. So what happens to American children who generally get their first smartphone around the age of 11 and then get socialized into the cultures of Instagram, TikTok, video game, and online life for the rest of their teen years? The sequential introduction of age-appropriate experiences tuned to sensitive periods, shared with peers, had been the norm during the era of play-based childhood. But in a phone-based childhood, children are plunged into a whirlpool of adult content and experiences that arrive in no particular order. Identity, selfhood, emotions, relationships will all be different if they developed online rather than real life. Any child who spends her sensitive period as a heavy user of social media will be shaped by the cultures of those sites. This may explain why Gen Z's mental health outcomes are so much worse than those of millennials. Gen Z was the first generation to go through puberty and the sensitive period for cultural learning on smartphones. Imitation is the fundamental mechanism of human behavior. It is how we learn. So now part of what that means is that we need to choose those who we imitate quite carefully, because the question is not, will I imitate? It's who will I imitate? It's what will I imitate? René Girard talked about mimetic desire. He says the primary thing that we imitate is, what do I want? And he says the great romantic lie is we all think that our desires are a deep expression of our own selves and our own personhood. But actually, I want that money, I want that status, I want that car. We learned that from watching other people. I was thinking about this because really, the one that we would imitate in the biblical world would be called a rabbi, where a disciple, apprentice is a word. That word for disciple is often translated in the ancient world to be an apprentice of somebody, is to be with them, to learn how to do from them what they do themselves. You imitate them. I had an outlet that didn't work in our bedroom the other day, and my mechanical carpentry rabbi is Chuck. And so I thought, what would Chuck do? And I called Chuck up, and Chuck said, go to the bathroom and hit the reset button on the outlet in there. I said, no. I'm talking about the outlet in my bedroom. The bathroom's fine. But Chuck said to do it, and I know that if I try to do what Chuck does, I have a much better chance of succeeding than if I just do what I would do on my own. So I went in there, and I pushed that button, and it was like magic. He knows. He is my outlet rabbi. We learn by imitating. Imitation is the fundamental mechanism of human behavior. And that brings me now to these words from Dallas Willard. Who teaches you? Whose disciple are you, honestly? One thing is sure, you are somebody's disciple. You learned how to live from somebody else. There are no exceptions to this rule, for human beings are just the kind of creatures that have to learn and keep learning from others how to live. Aristotle remarked that we owe more to our teachers than to our parents, for though our parents gave us life, our teachers, hopefully, taught us the good life. It is hard to come to realistic terms with all this. Today, especially in Western cultures, we prefer to think that we are our own persons. My desire is the unique expression of myself. I'm an original, I'm unique. No, life does not work that way. That is only because we have been mastered by those who have taught us that we do or should do this. Such individualism is part of the legacy that makes us modern. But we certainly did not come by that individualistic posture through our own individual independent insight into ultimate truth. You are the disciple of several somebodies. And it's very likely they shaped you in ways that are far from what is best for you or even coherent. Now, if you ask a little Gosling, why are you following those boots around? Gosling will not be able to tell you. I don't know. Seemed like a good idea. Because it's an instinct. It's a reflex. But we have the ability to think and question and decide and redecide. And that's what you and I get to do today. I love these words again from Dallas. It is one of the major transitions of life to recognize who has taught us, mastered us, and then to evaluate the results in us of their teaching. This is a harrowing task, and sometimes we just can't face it. But it can also open the door to choose other masters, possibly better masters, and one master above all. Now, in our day, we call rabbis influencers, and they may be better or they may be worse, but the ultimate invitation today is to become an imitator of Christ. Thomas à Kempis wrote a book 600 some years ago called The Imitation of Christ. And from what I understand, it has been translated into more languages other than the Bible than any other book, because it's such a powerful thing. And over again in the scriptures, 1 Corinthians 11, Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. Or in chapter 4, be imitators of me. Or Philippians 3, joining others in imitating me. Or in Philippians 4, whatever you have heard from me or seen in me or learned from me, put into practice over and over. Imitation is the fundamental mechanism of human behavior. So we look at other people who help us follow our master. And I'll look at the way a widow who I know who has very little is incredibly generous and try to imitate that, or the way that Danny brings immense joy into a room and try to imitate that, or the way that Barb attends to people so carefully and try to imitate that. Today, be an imitator. Choose wisely. Who will be your model? Who will be your hero? And above all, as I go through this day, the invitation is to be an imitator of the one who alone has mastered life. We got to get out more.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes from John. You can also visit our website, becomenew.com, to access all of our videos there, or subscribe for the emails that go with each video. But my personal favorite way to stay in the loop with Become New is by text. We will send you a text message every morning that we release a new video with the title of that video and just the link to the video. So if you want that, you can text the word BECOME to the number 855-888-0444, and we'll get those messages to you. If you've got a prayer request, there's a group of us who meet each weekday, Monday through Friday, for 1 hour to pray for viewers just like yourself. So you can text or email us your prayer request at 855-888-0444 or at connect@becomenew.com. Remember, the most important thing about your life is the person you become. We'll see you next time.